Hello there, you're welcome to another interesting edition of my podcast where I share my opinion on, issues that is making the rounds on the media space and I just give you my opinion as it is. This evening I'm going to be talking well, about a story that's been making the media space probably not at a level that it would necessarily generate attention from a worldwide perspective, but certainly within England, more particularly, it concerns the football club I support, and that's the Newcastle United football club. I'm sure you'll be wondering, how can a Nigerian like myself support Newcastle United? Well, I'm just different. Let's put it that way. Anyway, the story that broke was surrounding the statement or the comment of an ex Newcastle player by the name Jamaine Jenas. Jamaine Jenas played for Newcastle for about 4 seasons, thereabout, from 2002 to the early part of 2005 2006 season before he moved on to Tottenham. And he made certain statements that I felt was a bit unfair and a bit disrespectful to the club. I would say gave you the platform that you rode on to make you the person you became. And what was the platform? First, we took you from Nottingham Forest, who at the time were playing in Division 1, which is now known as the Championship. Obviously, we took you because we felt that we believe you were a talent that was emerging, and coming to Newcastle at the time you came was a huge boost for you. And it was a good platform to ride on to glory. Now, he made a statement that, whenever he goes to play in England, or whenever he goes to play for England, maybe when he's called on international duties, and comes back at Newcastle, he feels he feels several levels above Newcastle players, above the standard, because the training regime was quite different. And as soon as it gets back to Newcastle, that standard begins to drop. And I felt that's a bit disrespectful to Newcastle, particularly if we consider the context or we consider the time you played for Newcastle United. And what is the context? You joined Newcastle United at the time when we were playing in Champions League. The first season when you joined, Newcastle placed fourth above Chelsea, and we played in Champions League in that year. Even though he only managed to play about 12 games in his first season, and that's understandable for a player that is still coming up, or a potential player still coming up. But in the second season, he had fully settled. That's in 2002-2003 season. Newcastle played in the Champions League as well, and we were, I think we were placed third. We were placed third that season, above Chelsea and Liverpool, and we played in Champions League as well. And your third season with us, which was, that's Jamaine Jenas, his third season with us as well. We played in Europe. We didn't compete in the Champions League, but we came fifth, and we played in the the UEFA Champions and the Europa League. The UEFA Cup, which is now known as the Europa Cup. So, in 3 of the 4 seasons that you stayed, the only season that you probably did not achieve anything much was when Newcastle nosedived, and that was the 2004-2005 season. The next season, which was 2005-2006, you only played 4 games, and he moved to Tottenham. So you enjoyed the best football of your career, really, literally, in Newcastle. So you coming out to say that the level at which you played in England was quite different from when you were in Newcastle is utter balderdash, in my opinion, and it's a bit delusional. If anything at all, when you moved to Tottenham, your standard dropped, you couldn't hack it, and your form began to dip. With Tottenham, the only Champions League game you played with Tottenham was in the 2010, 2011 season when Tottenham surprisingly got to the Champions League and they got to the quarterfinals. So you saying that Newcastle, the level you played at Newcastle was below par is not balanced and is unfounded if we are to go by the stats. And as I've mentioned briefly earlier on, you played the best football. You enjoyed the best football in Newcastle. You played in Europe. You played in Champions League 2 of your 4 seasons with Newcastle. Now, if you're talking about Newcastle in the last 10 years, particularly during a post-Shepherd era, that's when Mike Ashley took over. If you're looking at Newcastle from that perspective, it can be understandable, but then you never played for Newcastle during those period. So I think your statement is not balanced. And I think you were just trying to speak for the camera. And I'm glad a well-respected player, Alan Shearer, replied back with a joke. And this is what Shearer said. He said, on behalf of me and my mates at the time, we apologize to Jenas for not being up to your level when you returned from England games. And they laughed out loud. And that's quite funny as well too. In any case, if I'm to even compare Jamaine Jenas, if I'm to think about the impact he made at Newcastle at the time, I couldn't really say we missed him when he moved on. At the time, we had players like Laurent Robert, the likes of Norbert Solano, Gary Speed, Kieran Dyer. We had better players who, in my opinion, were much better than he was at the time. So I think he needs to, he owes the club an apology and retract his statement. In any way, I just thought to give my own opinion on what Jenas has said on TV, on BT Sports, particularly for those my Nigerian friends of listeners who will be listening to this podcast, that those statements were not balanced, they were a bit unfounded. I don't know what you think about what Jamaine Jenas has said. You can drop me your comments on the comment section, and until I come your way again, that's his perspective from Oba. I'm out.